Cheers, guys. It's time for Thursday's happy hour. Have a little theme music for today. We're going to be talking about Valpolicella, and there are a few styles that have to do with sugar. So I picked some great 80s music. Happy hour, guys. It's time to put something in your glass. Drop in the comments. Let me know where you are, what you're drinking. Y'all, I'm so stoked. Spent much of my day refreshing my brain on all things Valpolicella, and we're going to have a fun wine nerd section today. We are going to be talking about sugar. I don't know about pouring it on me, but I could go for some Recioto Valpolicella, some Amarone Valpolicella today. Doug, what is up? Good to see you in the comments. Reed as well. Happy hour indeed. Sharon in Fredericksburg. Good to see you. Eric and Asha checking in from San Antonio, drinking Maker's Mark and Coke. McPherson Roussan for Reed in Austin. I haven't had that Roussan, I don't think. I've had their Shinnons and their Pick Pools. I don't know if I've had the Roussan from McPherson. You have to let me know how it is. And I think McPherson makes great white wine. So especially that sparkling Shannon that they do. Jeffrey in Arlington having some chilled William Chris relief wine. That incredible Cinso. Love it. Happy early Friday indeed, guys. We survived Thursday. We basically made it to the weekend. I know some folks are like closing down early on Fridays during the summer or not working on Fridays at all. So cheers to you if that's you. It's just been too long since I listened to this song. I think there's going to be a little bit of like dance party time in my living room tonight, jamming this out for sure. After I have a little bit more wine at happy hour. Brian is still in Richmond. Alan, what's up in Sugarland? Having some 500 Block Merlot from 2012. Man, how is that showing? I'm curious. 8 years old. I love that. Sarah in San Antonio having a basil lemon martini. I love it. Love it. Lane Schuhart, what is up? Howdy indeed. In Fredericksburg, having William Chris Mourvedre Loft Draw Vineyards. Rinda, good to see you. And yes, Brian, that McPherson Pick Pool is really good. Guys, we're getting close to starting. So if you don't have something in your drink, if you haven't checked in the comments, do it because we're about to kick things off. And we got a lot of meaty, chewy, sweet, delicious wine nerdery that we got to get through today. I hope you're ready. Buckle up. I even dressed up a little today. You can't really see it yet, but a little talk about my special shirt I'm wearing. Okay, guys, it's 5:03. This song goes forever. I don't hate it, but it's like a 4.5 minute song. And hopefully it'll help you connect what we're going to be talking about today. So when you're trying to like rack your brain for what did Dee say about Valpolicella and all the different kinds and all the different names and man. So it is time for us to jump in. If you haven't checked in the comments, make sure you check in. I want to see you, want to shout you out, want to know what you're drinking. Do want to say, because we're having a very high-end, classic, well-known, widely respected, and also just because I got it in the mail, I am sporting a polo as opposed to my typical. So normally, guys, on the show, just a little behind-the-scenes action here. I wear a Lululemon workout shirt just because they are like incredibly comfortable and incredibly breathable. I used to think Lululemon was like the like brand that only women wore. And I was rightfully corrected. My friend Kelly actually works for them. they've had a big push recently to invest in the hospitality industry for the sake of wellness. And so they really want to build community with chefs and sommeliers and the wine industry as well to promote wellness in the hospitality industry. I don't know if you guys know, but there's a long history of unhealthy habits in hospitality. So I just want to say shout out to my friend Kelly for getting me hooked on Lululemon stuff and helping me, look a little sharper for happy hours. So guys, this Lululemon polo, guys, I'm not getting any kind of kickback or anything from them. I wish I was. Is the same material as their workout shirts. So like you can look a little fancier with a collar and still feel as comfortable the rest of the way down. So I'm digging it. I was like, I got to wear it for happy hour today because, just got to look a little nicer for you guys every once in a while, even though I got a backwards hat and sunglasses inside. No big deal. That's enough about what I'm wearing. Nobody cares. Guys, today I am drinking one of my current favorites, I should say, William Chris wines. Hopefully you're drinking and or have drunken. Gosh, terrible with conjugating that verb. Grenache from Lahey Vineyards in the Texas High Plains from the textbook incredible 2017 vintage. I think this is one of the best like current release wines that William Chris has. There are tons of them. Obviously, we make lots and lots of different labels, but for me, this like lighter style red, which you can probably see through even on the camera, has such great lifted aromatics. I think a lot of times Grenache can get too ripe and can kind of get jammy, high in alcohol, and you lose these really delicate aromas. Not this one, guys. You stick your nose into this and you get a nice like orange rind note for me, a little bit floral. Gosh, I have gone back and back and back to this wine when I'm like, okay, what bottle of William Chris do I want to pick up? It's usually this Grenache, and especially for food. I worked with Chef Ty to make sure that this was in our food and wine experience where we teach you how to pair, and he creates exquisite bites, and I work with him to pair the perfect wine with it. And this for me was like, we have to keep the Grenache in the experience because it's such a great wine. So if you haven't had it, or if it's been a while, you should get some more. It's stupid good. So okay, so you get this like candied, I think we've talked about this before. Y'all remember those old school candy necklaces that have like confectioner's sugar candy? There's a very particular kind of sugary candy flavor in those. For me, it's like that, but like candied cherry, candied raspberry note. So it's tart red fruit, but with this like candied note to it. Yep. Teeny tiny little bit of spice from the oak aging, guys. We did about 25% new French oak for this. It aged for 15 months. So I can get a little bit of that spice. Over time, that's just going to be even more well integrated into the wine. It won't stand out. For me, this reminds me of like a spiced, like you get candied raspberry, and like spiced orange peel. Next level good. But you think about those flavors and you're like, okay, what kind of food would those flavors go good on? And I can't get away from like good white meat. So like chicken and pork. You could do like a lemon garlic roasted chicken. You could actually, guys, there's very few wines. You'd have to be careful pairing wines with vegetables, but I really think this wine would go great with grilled vegetable. You could do like grilled vegetable skewers on the grill, and this together with that, those are going to be where I'm living, especially for the summer. Put chicken on the grill, put some pork tenderloin. Man, this would sing. Honestly, I'm just going to drink it by itself because it's so good. Okay. Awesome, guys. Well, that's the William Chris wine of the day today. Check back in. I'm glad, Brian, I'm glad you have this shirt as well. This is like a new to me shirt. I'm really excited about it. Deborah, good to see you. Lynette and Lane and Dottie, drinking Mary Ruth up in Lubbock. Sarah's drinking Pet Nat at the beach. I'm so jealous, both because you're drinking Pet Nat and because you're at the beach. More specifically, you're at the beach. Like I can get Pet Nat, but like doing that at the beach sounds really nice. Okay, guys, y'all, it's time to buckle up. We have got a lot of Italian meaty nerdiness coming at you today, and I hope you're ready. We are going to talk about Valpolicella, and as always, I want you to drop into the comments while I'm talking with cool questions, comments, etc., because I want to engage you. I want you to tell me what I'm not describing appropriately, what you're not getting, or questions that you have that pop up in the middle of it. But today we are going to be discussing Valpolicella. Okay, and I talked about this yesterday with Italian words. It helps if you slow down to pronounce it. So it's Valpolicella. Okay, it means the valley of many cellars. Pretty great name for a place if we're talking about wine, right? The valley of many cellars, Valpolicella. So they've been making wine here. It's actually kind of a hub. The Veneto region was kind of a hub for winemaking back in the Roman times. And so tons of history of winemaking in this part of the world. I mean, way, way, way back. You guys know I like to start with these regions. I like to start with colored pencils and a geography lesson. So everybody take a drink. Happy hour. It's the end of Thursday. We're heading into the weekend. Let's take a look at a map, okay? We've been talking about Italy a lot, and so today is no different. I want you to notice that we're still in northern Italy. So kind of on the part where the leg attaches to the body, the upper thigh, and right in the middle is this Veneto region, okay? This Veneto region, you'll notice, is kind of in, well, maybe it's kind of like towards the butt cheek, towards the backside of the leg, this kind of aqua color. And I want to focus on this town of Venice, which you guys are probably familiar with. It's on the coast, right? So Venice is in the Veneto region. Now I want you to go inland from Venice, and you're going to see, and I'm going to zoom in right here, this city of Verona. Now, does that ring any bells for any of you? In fair Verona, where we lay our scene, right? Like the beginning of a very famous Shakespearean play known as, anybody? Romeo and Juliet. So the Valpolicella region is very close. It's right next to Verona. And so I'm actually going to pull this off and zoom in to get an even closer look at the Veneto. So I'm going to pull this off, share my screen again, and we're going to zoom in to the Veneto region by itself. Cool. So we've zoomed in. Here's Verona in the middle of the screen now. Okay. And you notice the river that comes from the mountains. So in the north up here where there's gray and this river starts at the top is the Alps, guys. These are the Italian Alps still. So the river comes out of the mountains and comes through Verona. It touches this dark brown, kind of W looking shaped region is Valpolicella, okay? This dark brown region is Valpolicella. You'll notice that over here to the left, there's a very large lake. This is the largest lake in Italy, and it does impact the climate in this region. Okay, again, largest lake in Italy right here. It does impact this region. Okay, anytime you got a big body of water nearby, it's always going to do that. Cool. So we're talking about Valpolicella today. It's this big brown region right here. I got to move my sunglasses, make sure that is brown. That is indeed dark brown. Okay. That's Valpolicella. Cool. Things to know about this region. Obviously, I told you it's just north of Verona, where they have Juliet's balcony. You can actually go see it. It is mostly volcanic soils that are rich in limestone. But it's also, because we're talking about the foothills of the Alps, the foothills of the mountains, we are talking about elevation again. And what happens in elevation is that at night, it still gets quite cool and it makes the grapes slow the ripening down. So when you have longer ripening seasons, you're able to maintain really good, what? Acidity. We've been talking about this for like almost 2 weeks now, because we talked about it in Germany, and we talked about it in Piedmont, and we talked about it in Lombardy, and now we're talking about it in the Veneto. Anytime you have elevation and it gets cold at night, it slows down the ripening process. And when you do that, you're able to maintain acidity in the grapes. And that's actually really key to the Valpolicella wines, because if you didn't have good acid, these wines would be very flabby, because they do get very fruity and intense, and without acidity to balance it, you're going to have a fat, round wine that's very flabby, and nobody wants a flabby wine, okay? So That's about all you need to know about the location. Everybody take a drink. You made it through. Oh, I should have put thing one. So let me actually put that, because we just discussed thing one. I always get carried away when I'm ready to jump into maps. You can tell I get excited, you know, like colored pencil style. I'm like, maps, maps, maps. I got to show them maps. We can talk about maps. And I forget to paste the thing one up there. Valpolicella is a winemaking area in the Veneto region of Northeast Italy, famous for their red wine. Okay, so key distinction here is that Valpolicella is a region. It is not a grape. Okay, just as a reminder today, Valpolicella is a region, not a grape. And there are many kind of what we're going to call them sub-styles of Valpolicella that you're going to learn about today. Okay, so Valpolicella region, and then there are wines, and really just it's kind of one wine made in different styles. Okay, cool. Yes, you guys got Romeo and Juliet. I'm glad that it's there in your brain. The second thing you need to know, so I'm going to lay it out like this, because there are 4 different styles that I want to tell you about today. First, I need to tell you about a technique, because 3 of the 4 styles we're going to cover use this technique. So first I'm going to introduce the technique, and then I'm going to introduce the 4 styles. Okay, so thing 2 is that 3 of the styles of Valpolicella use appassimento. Okay, let's put it here in 3 styles of Valpolicella utilize appassimento, a process of drying grapes which concentrates sugars and fruit flavors. Okay, again, I'm talking to you about this technique, this appassimento technique, and then we're going to talk about the styles after this, but I need you to grasp this and understand it. This is actually really stinking cool. Before I do that, one quick, because we need to take vacations to all these. Here's a quick picture I wanted to share with you of what it looks like in this region. A lot of rolling hills, which makes sense. Check that out, guys. How beautiful is that? I mean, anybody else want to go with me? We're just going to stay in northern Italy the whole time. We'll start in Piedmont, then we'll go to Lombardy, or we can do Franciacorta sparkling wine, like we talked about yesterday, and then we can end up here, Valpolicella, drink some incredible reds, just stunning, lots of vineyard land. Cool. I just want to make sure you got that. Now, I want to talk to you about appassimento. So now that we've covered that, and I showed you that really sweet picture, I want to show you the appassimento in practice. Okay. Check this out, guys. So let's go all the way back to the 6th century. Valpolicella's regional council cites a 6th century letter, which refers to the wines of Verona, right, that nearby town, and the landowners hanging grapes upside down after harvest. So even back in the 6th century, which for those of you who don't know, right, like you name it after, like that would be the 6th century would be the 500s, right? All the way back in the day, they were taking the grape clusters after they hand harvested them, right? There were no machines back then, and they would hang the grapes, and they would do this in the open air or inside of these open air buildings like they do now. So modern day, you're seeing it's kind of like a hybrid of the old school and the new school, where they have these shelves. So they put all the grape clusters on shelves, open to the air, and they let the grapes dry out. This is the appassimento process of drying grapes. Now, what this does, like it says there in thing 2, it's going to concentrate the sugars, the fruit flavors, the acidity. That's because all the water is dehydrating out of the grape. So all the water leaves the grapes. You get almost like the beginning of raisins. This is how raisins are made, right? Suck all the water out and concentrate everything that's still left in the grape. Okay. Now, modern day, they have like a very controlled environment where they'll put it in a room and they have like humidity settings, temperature settings, all, you name it. But there are many producers that want to hold on to that old way of life and still do the traditional method, where it's just like open air. They'll lay it on straw mats. So straw mats was like the kind of traditional way to do it back in the day, and in the sun. So they'll put straw mats in the sun and dry out the grapes that way. Stinking cool that they do this. Now we're starting, again, this is for 3 of the 4 styles. So you're going to get these really intense grapes, highly concentrated in flavor, highly concentrated in sugar, in acid, in tan, like all of it, guys. Everything when you dry out grapes is going to be more intense. Okay, so we're starting with Appassimento for 3 of these styles. Now, take a drink. I told you I was going to tell you about the technique and then tell you about the styles, and now we got to jump into the styles. So I hope you guys are ready for this. Man, this Grenache is tasting even better. It starts to open up. That candied cherry gets almost like this, almost like a little bit of vanilla note that comes from the barrel aging. Ooh, that's good. Okay, let me take down the Appassimento picture. Hopefully you got that. We're drying out grapes. Cool. I love this. It's not to pass the mints. We are going to have an epic wine trip maybe in 2022. Who knows? Sarah's asking, why don't others try this? Could William Chris experiment to do this? Absolutely. I think you could experiment with drying out grapes anywhere. You could honestly, they do this even with white grapes in the region, in the Suave region, which I think we've talked about before. Guys, we're getting up there in number of episodes, and I have to go back and look at my spreadsheet to see what topics we've covered. But you can do this with white grapes. You can do this with red grapes. This is kind of the heart of where it's from and where it's made famous. So yeah, absolutely, you could do this. Okay, so now that we know the technique of Appassimento, let's talk about the styles. So buckle up, guys. I've got a visual that's going to help. Hopefully, you guys will have some great questions for me as well. So thing number 3, Valpolicella is produced mainly from the Corvina grape in 4 distinct styles: Recioto, Amarone, Ripasso, and Classico. Okay, so they're all going to have Valpolicella in the name, but then the style comes with it. Okay, Recioto is the sweetest, and then we go to Amarone, and then to Ripasso, and then Classico. And I have a visual, so stick with me for 2 seconds. Let me show you. Ba-ba-da-ba. Everybody loves a good visual, right? At least I do, especially when I'm learning like categories. I really like a good visual. And this time there's a pyramid. I want to shout out to Malvin Phuket, whose resources and visuals are the top of the line in the wine industry. She is known as Wine Folly. You should follow her. I'm going to take this off so we can see the bottom of the pyramid. This is a lot of information. I just want you to see the names because I'm going to tell you about them. So let me zoom in just on the names, because I don't want you to worry about all the other writing on there, okay? Just the names, starting at the top. First, before we jump into these styles, let me tell you about the grape Corvina. Corvina is the main grape of Valpolicella red wines. Now, it is required to be, I think, a minimum of 50%, but can be all the way up to 90. The second grape is Rondinella. Rondinella is the other required by law grape that must go into Valpolicella, at least in small amounts. Corvina, the main grape, is famous for its cherry flavor. So Valpolicella across the board is going to have a baseline of cherry. So always think cherry to begin with, and then you're going to start, depending on the style, adding different notes around the cherry. Okay, Rondinella again is worth mentioning as a supporting grape, but it's not super noteworthy and not a lot of people talk about it. Okay, just remember Corvina with Valpolicella. Okay, so now that we talked about the grape, let's start at the very top of the pyramid here with Recioto. Recioto at the top of the pyramid because one, it is the most expensive usually, depending. I mean, obviously, like it's producer dependent, but it is the sweetest. Guys, this is picking very ripe grapes, doing the Appassimento technique, the Appassimento process of drying out the grapes until they are very, very, very raisinated. They let them dry on mats or hang from the rafters all the way through like January, February. Then they use those raisins essentially at that point to press them and make wine from that. You can imagine how intense and like what's the word, concentrated the sugars are in those berries. So they're going to make a wine and they're going to start to vinify it from those shriveled grapes. They're going to stop fermentation before all the sugar converts to alcohol. A lot of times, guys, the yeast just goes away. Okay. The yeast just goes away. It dies off because at the point you get to like 14.5, 15% alcohol, there are a lot of strains of yeast that can't survive, but they can always pause fermentation whenever they want. Okay. They can lower the temperature. They can put a little bit of sulfur dioxide. The Recioto, it is most important for you to remember, Recioto is a dessert wine. You see the word Recioto, and that's why it's at the top. I'm going to tell you, it's the most concentrated, it's the most intense. You want it in very small amounts, like little half glasses, and it is full of sugar. Now, the great thing that I told you about the Corvina grape and this region where it's grown, it maintains good acidity. So though you have concentration of sugars in this wine, in addition to intense flavors, you're talking about like plum and tobacco and like dried fruits, like dried fig, dried raisin. You're going to have this really great line of acidity to balance that sugar. Okay, these because of the concentration, tannins are also concentrated, so it's going to have a nice little texture as well. Okay, so that's Recioto. If you want dessert wine, Recioto is where you're going to go. All right. Then you have Amarone. Amarone is probably the one you're most familiar with. It had its heyday, I believe, in like the 80s, maybe even the 70s. It became very popular in the US. It kind of went out of style in the 90s and the 2000s. It's starting to become popular again. But Amarone is essentially the same grapes that they use for Recioto. They don't dry them out quite as long, so maybe one less month, but it just depends on the producer. They don't dry them out quite as much, and then they ferment until it's basically dry. Okay, so Amarone, think very similar to Recioto, but they're gonna let those sugars ferment into alcohol until it's almost completely dry. And we say perceptibly dry, meaning if you measured it with scientific tools, you probably measure a little bit of sugar, but not enough for the human palate to notice because of how high the acidity is. So you think of Amarone, intense, dried fruit notes, cherry, tobacco, all those things I just mentioned. You get the perception of sweetness, but without the sugar. So it is actually considered, most of the time it's considered a dry wine, maybe slightly off dry, depending on the producer and the year. Okay, dark berries, sometimes you get a little bit of cocoa in that. These wines will age and age and age and age and age. And you start again to get some of those balsamic notes that I've talked about in some other red wines with age from Italy. Really incredible. Okay, Ripasso, guys. And let me pause there. We've talked about two, probably the most intense. You've got some good questions here. So Donna is asking, is Valpolicella a sweeter wine? So the Recioto, and I would say Recioto, yes, absolutely. It's a dessert wine. Amarone della Valpolicella has the perception of sweetness without sugar. Okay, so it's not a dessert wine. You can have it after dinner. It still goes great with braised meats. That's actually how they talk about like one of the #1 ways to pair this. You need something intense in flavor to stand up to the intensity of the wine, because Amarone is very intense. And so you think braised meats. And then all of the other styles are dry. So Recioto is really the only sweet wine. Okay. Jennifer's asking, do they do a lot of blends in the region or single varietal wines? Not really. If they ever did, it would be a 100% Corvina, which essentially would be like a regular Valpolicella. And we're going to get to those entry level wines. And when I say entry level, they're the classic styles, the classicos, which aren't as intense. They're a little fresher and fruitier, but we're going to get to that. So let's see, good questions here. Sarah's asking, is Recioto like a port or not as thick? It's not like a port because it's not fortified, so there's not extra alcohol added, and it's not as thick. Not as high of now. Of course, there are different levels of port and different sugar levels in port. Recioto is very unique. I wouldn't compare it to port. I would say the only thing it has in common, I'm second guessing myself now that I say that. The two things it has in common with port are the dried fruit notes that are typical, and elevated sugars, but not nearly as high as port, and it's not high in alcohol. So port is usually in its own category with Madeira and sherry as a fortified wine. We don't talk about Recioto in the same way. Okay, but good question, guys. You guys are like nerding out, and I love this. Does the pyramid represent output? Yeah, you can think about it like that. Absolutely, and um, it takes more grapes to start with to get at the very top because you get less juice from the raisinated grapes. But yeah, think about it, and honestly, a lot of people think about it quality wise too. But it's hard to compare a Recioto dessert wine to like a Valpolicella Classico, which is meant to be a light, fresh wine. So also good question. Think about it as production. That's a good way to think about it. Okay, so we still have two styles left. This next one is probably the most important that I need to explain to you because it has another technique called the ripasso. Okay, it's not appassamento, which we learned is the drying out of the grapes. Ripasso means to repass, and I'm actually going to show you another visual. Who'd have thunk it that D has a visual, because I really think this is super helpful. Okay, I don't want you to get too concerned with this. I just want you to look at this step 3 right here. Okay. When they dry out the grapes for the Recioto and the Amarone, they will make the wine, the Amarone and the Recioto wine, and they will still have the leftover skins of the grapes that were dried out. The regular Classico, the typical table wine of this region, the Valpolicella Classico, will be done fermenting, and they will introduce the leftover skins and seeds of the Amarone and Recioto wines to do a second fermentation for Ripasso Valpolicella. I'm going to slow that down again. This is not a sparkling wine, but it does go through a second fermentation. So simultaneously, they're going to be making the entry-level table wine, just called Valpolicella Classico, light, fresh cherry. We haven't even gotten there, but it's just an easy red wine that's incredible, and we're going to talk about how all of us should be drinking more of it. Okay, Valpolicella Classico is being made while the grapes dry out for Recioto and Amarone, like we just talked about. The Classico will finish fermenting. It's done. It's a wine. They use the dried grapes for Recioto and Amarone and make that wine, and then they have leftover skins and seeds from those Amarone and Recioto wines, those intensely raisinated skins, and they will put those leftover skins with the Valpolicella Classico for a second fermentation. That is the repass. They repass the wine with the skins that went through the appassamento method. All right, that's why it's called Valpolicella Ripasso. I know it sounds crazy, but that's what that step 3 on that shows. On the right in pink, they're making Recioto and Amarone. On the left, they're making Classico. And then if they bring the skins over from the Recioto and Amarones and do a second ferment, then it becomes a Ripasso Valpolicella. That is going, if you do a second fermentation with more skins, skins are where all the intensity is. Flavors, tannin, acidity, sugar, all that stuff. It's going to beef up everything. Higher alcohol, more intensity of aroma. It is going to no longer be just a fresh, easy, great table wine. It's going to be a more intense table wine. It's not sweet. This is not a dessert wine. So the key here is Ripasso gets more intensity. So if you want to move up the intensity level, you need to go find a Ripasso. And yes, Ripasso means second pass. This is a good thing. They repass over those raisinated skins that were used for Recioto. So pretty stinking cool. I really love the Ripasso wines. I think that they are really where the value is. Okay, and then this last one that we've been talking about is the Valpolicella Classico. Okay, the Valpolicella Classico is known for its very fresh, bright, lively, acidic, sour cherry based wines. And when I say entry level table wines, don't think cheap, crappy wine, because it's not cheap, crappy wine. This is incredible, but fresh and fruit driven and alive, bright wine that you want to be drinking. So very different kinds of foods that you're going to be doing that with. Definitely more of a chill on that wine than you would some of the other styles. So we think back to the pyramid, and I'm going to pull the pyramid up one more time just because I think you guys will get this. And we'll start from the bottom this time to kind of summarize what we just learned. Okay, starting at the bottom, you have Valpolicella Classico. Okay, up from that, they say Superiore. You just need to know that that's been aged in barrels a little bit longer. Really, the first two levels, 1 and 2, are pretty much the same wine, one that's been aged a little bit longer. Okay, so Valpolicella Classico and Superiore are more fruit-driven, more fresh, more alive. That's like the normal still wine. Then up from that in section 3 there, you see the Ripasso, where the skins from Amarone and Recioto were repassed over to make a more intense, and again, I think this is where the real sweet spot is in this region. Go look for Ripasso wines of Valpolicella, and that's where you're really going to get an amazing bang for your buck. Intensity of all the things you love. When you get to Amarone and Recioto, you're talking about wines made only from raisinated grapes. Amarone is the drier style, and Recioto is the dessert. Okay, those wines can get rather expensive because it takes so many more grapes to make the same amount of wine when you dehydrate the grapes. Cool. Guys, this has been so much information. Let's all take a drink. You guys survived it. Let's check in the comments, see if there's any questions I need to answer. Love this. Here's one from Jennifer. With the skins dried out, does that make the wine a lighter color? Great question. No, it actually will increase the color. So with wines that have not been dehydrated, you still have a fair amount of water in the grape itself. And so that's actually going to dilute the color a little bit more. There is like a, what I'm going to call it, like it's a bell curve. It's kind of like a bell curve shaped. When you're macerating wine on skins, at some point it starts to reverse. So longer skin fermentation with thicker skins equals more color. So I guess, like, how does it look on your screen? We need to go this way because I'm backwards. So the longer you ferment on the skins and thick skins, even more color, more color, more color. And at some point, you need to take the skins away from the juice. You're going to transfer too much tannin, too much bitterness. And honestly, over time, if you go too far, the color starts to go back away. So winemakers, they deserve every penny of the money they get paid. They're experts in this. But good question. We already talked about the port and Recioto. Let's see if there's any other questions here. Sarah's asking, why are French wines considered superior? Sounds like Italians. I agree. I think, like, guys, people are sleeping on Italian wine. There became this infatuation with all things French. I think, yes, French are great at what they do, and I love French wine. Don't get me wrong, I always will. And it's where everything else kind of, like, I think the world of fine wine a lot of times was based on French, but Italy is the sleeping giant. And it sounds stupid to say sleeping giant because there's the Romans, like, they were the ones making wine from the beginning. But I think Americans especially, we've forgotten about how great these wines are. And I'm going to include myself in that. As I've been studying the past week about these regions, I'm just remembering, like, man, I am missing out. I haven't had some of these wines in a long time. So I love this. Is a good question. DOC compared to DOCG. DOCG is supposed to be a tier above in quality. So DOC is like an AVA in Texas or in the US. And then you can have a sub-region within the DOC that's even more strict and supposed to be higher quality. Now, that's not always true. There's a guy named Ian D'Agata who is widely considered the world's foremost on Italian wine. And he will tell you personally that a lot of times the DOCG part of it, because it's supposed to be higher quality, is more of a marketing ploy of that region. And it doesn't actually equate to higher quality. It really depends on which region you're talking about. So just be careful. Don't always assume. And this is really in Italy. If the difference between a DOC and a DOCG doesn't always equate to better wine. Okay. Rick says, what do you food? Okay. What food should I have? Oh, I don't know why my camera went out there for a second. What kind of food do you have with Ripasso? This is great. I go back to the braised meat things that I was talking about with, oh my gosh, I can't even. with Amarone. Amarone is going to be it's even more intense than Ripasso is. So you're still going to want to be in that braised meat world. I would also go to the, like, think about steak with mushroom sauce, like rich, intense. These wines have good tannin, they have good acidity. And because of their intensity, they need something rich and full of flavor to eat. So those steaks that you're just going to like put all the toppings on top of, big piece of red meat, great like cream based, but like full of like black pepper, mushroom sauce, is where I would go with that. Okay, guys, this has been a lot of information. I love it. You guys have stuck with me. Another incredible day of Italian wine. It's time for these three things. Let's all take a drink. You guys survived learning all about Valpolicella. You guys know more than like 90% of wine drinkers now, because that was a really nerdy section. Hopefully you learned something. Remember the biggest difference between appassamento, which is the technique of drying grapes, and ripasso is when you repass the wine over the skins of the other styles of wine. So appassamento and ripasso are two separate things. Not a lot of people know that. So you can correct your friends at the party, or just drink it and share it with them, because they'll like you more if you do that. Okay, these three things, guys. Planning a trip to the hill country. You know, Chef Ty made picnic packs. These things are unbelievable. If you hadn't had them, you can reserve them online. If you're going to make a trip out, let us know ahead of time so we can have it ready to go when you arrive. Get a picnic pack. It's got sandwiches and salad and sweets and everything already ready to go. Take a road trip. The weather's incredible. You want to do it. This week's tasting pack, I think some of you said yesterday you've already gotten yours. The virtual tasting pack is ridiculous. These are libraried wines, 2 separate verticals, 14 and 15 from 2 separate vineyards, all Texas cab. Unbelievable. We've never done anything like this. You're going to want to hit it. So get it now. You can still pick it up at curbside. You know you want to make that little trip out. Last and certainly not least, I will be here again tomorrow celebrating the kickoff of the weekend with all of you, because Friday's the best. I'm actually going to have the 19 Malbec Rosé for the first time. So I had the pick pull for the first time earlier. Tomorrow, I'm going to have the 19 Malbec Rosé that we just released, are releasing in the white and rosé pack. So tomorrow, 5 o'clock, see you right here. Bye-bye. Oh, I almost forgot. Cheers to guys. You know, today I was thinking a lot about all the delivery drivers, because I've been doing a lot of like having folks deliver food to my house. So I just want to shout out all the food delivery folks that are getting all the restaurants and even bars now that can send you cocktails via delivery. I'm just super thankful that I can stay home, stay a little bit safer, and have folks deliver stuff. So shout out to all those folks delivering food for the rest of us. Cheers, guys. Thanks for sticking with me. I'll see you mañana.